Hello and welcome to LiCAS.news year-end wrap, and today we will be looking back at the year that was, and we'll be discussing the stories that had an impact on the lives of the people and the church in Asia. I am Maria Lucenio.
And I am Shirley Benedictos, and today we have with us the editor-at-large of LiCAS.news, Mr. Joe Torres.
Hi everyone, good day to both of you and Happy New Year to everyone.
So thank you, Joe, for gracing us with your presence in a very difficult and busy schedule that you have. To start off, what are the top stories that we have this year?
Actually, I prepared a list of stories that we had for LiCAS in the past year. First of all, of course, everyone knew about the pandemic and the challenges it brought to not only to our economy, but even to the lives of people, to mental health, even to our faith situation.
So how do you assess the church's response to the pandemic, especially here, especially in Asia?
Of course, it's all over the news during the height of the pandemic. Church leaders went out of their way against all odds, even saying mass on pickup trucks,
on the streets,
going out to the villages to reach out to people, to offer hope. But at the same time, it was also a difficult situation for a lot of dioceses, parishes, especially those that have to maintain their churches. And because of the pandemic, because of the financial situation of people, there were less donations. So the church as an institution also suffered. It was a difficult time for church leaders, but it was also a difficult time for the faithful to express their faith, to express their belief, to connect with God in the traditional way that they knew. But at the same time, the pandemic offered a different kind of religiosity. No?
In what way?
The pandemic gave way to people being close to each other. It was a chance for relationships to deepen. It was a chance for everyone to rediscover themselves. So if the pandemic brought us a situation that was seemingly hopeless, it also brought us a chance to be real families, to be people who should relate with each other. And I think it was the message of Pope Francis in several pronouncements that he made, even in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, when he talked about brotherhood of men and women, a fraternity, sorority, whatever you call it, of people not only of the same faith, but of people of different religious beliefs, that we are all brothers and sisters. It was what the Pope tried to tell us. In another statement that he did during the year, Pope Francis also pointed out to the need for creative ways to address the challenges of climate change, the challenges that is being posed to indigenous peoples who have been marginalized, who have been persecuted because of the interest of business. No? The pandemic was a time for all of us to realize that, and especially for the church, that life is not only about achieving what is the economic achievements, but also going back to our roots, to being human, as they say.
However, if there's a spark of hope in some parts here in the Philippines, there are some parts in Asia that are not so fortunate. Well, I'm talking about the human rights violations. There are some Christians persecuted in other parts of Asia. So what's your take on it?
It was really sad that during the pandemic also became a chance for a lot of governments, especially the governments who persecuted people, no? The governments who only think of how to advance their political agenda. For instance, there's the persecution of the Uyghurs in China. In Pakistan and India, Christians have been persecuted. The Rohingyas in Myanmar and Bangladesh continue to live in temporary shelters.
Yeah, and despite the pandemic, the church across Asia is also very vocal in calling out the human rights abuses. But in your opinion, is the church very respondent to it? Are they doing enough?
Of course, we've been used to the church issuing statements and condemning. It's consistent with its teachings. No? The church has been always for human rights, for the poor, for the marginalized, for the voiceless. There were a lot of statements, but I think in many parts of the world, including Asia, our church leaders have been away and found wanting. There's a lot of statements, there's a lot of condemnations, but it seems that there's a need for more action.
And also another thing about human rights, Joe, is that here in the Philippines, the indigenous peoples are also clamoring about the intensified human rights abuses they are experiencing even under the pandemic.
Yes, actually it's not only here in the Philippines. The persecution and marginalization of peoples, indigenous peoples all over the world continue even during the pandemic. It did not escape Pope Francis when he issued his pronouncement titled Querida Amazonia. He opened the doors to new creative ways of being a missionary church. And he condemned the business interests. And he mentioned about the assertion of the rights of indigenous peoples, especially when it comes to defending their land, to defending their ancestral domain. Unfortunately, nobody seems to be listening, even among church leaders.
And speaking of people asserting their rights, we also see religious leaders helping or accompanying these people in clamoring and fighting for their rights.
Yeah, and a lot of them are also persecuted. They have become victims, like the people that they're working with. A lot of church people, a lot of dedicated Christians have become victims of violence. In the Philippines, they have been red tagged, accused of being partial to the rebels and to advocates, to people who are working for human rights, and they have been accused of being communists. In other countries, they were also killed, they were also persecuted, and there are already a lot of martyrs, people who followed the example of Jesus, the example of early Christians who offered their lives, who offered everything for their faith. And it's sad, it's unfortunate that there's a growing number of church people who have become victims of these persecutions.
You mentioned a while ago about church leaders and missionaries. Recently, Pope Francis named new cardinals.
Yes, actually, it's interesting. In Asia, for instance, 2 bishops were named as cardinals or were admitted to the College of Cardinals. And contrary to expectations, for example, in the Philippines, where people were expecting that a new cardinal would be named for the Archdiocese of Cebu or Manila, Pope Francis named Archbishop Advincula of Capiz as a new member of the College of Cardinals. And Also, Archbishop Sim of Brunei. The Pope actually was just consistent about his pronouncements, earlier pronouncements, that he wants people in the peripheries.
Then why did not Pope Francis name a new bishop for Hong Kong?
Actually, a lot of people in Hong Kong and in Asia were expecting that the Pope would name a new leader. There was a clamor for a new leader for Hong Kong, especially with protests against the new security law. Unfortunately, yes, the Vatican is still silent, and I think there's some reason why the Holy See postponed the appointment of a new cardinal. The Holy See renewed the deal between China and the Vatican. It was a controversial deal, and it was in the news the whole year,
Yes.
aside from the protests in Hong Kong. It's a wait-and-see thing, whatever would be the implication of this agreement, of this extended agreement.
So 2020 is undeniably a tough year for everyone. What's your outlook on this, especially from the perspective of, let's say, Church in Asia?
The coming year is very significant for the Church in Asia, especially in the Philippines, which will be celebrating the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Christianity. There's supposed to be a big celebration. It's a happy thing for the church, not only in the Philippines but in Asia, because the Philippines has been a missionary to Asia, even a missionary to the world, according to church leaders with our migrant workers all over the world. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the celebration has been extended. But the mission continues. The Philippines declared the coming year as the year of mission to the world, the Missio Agentes. And with this declaration is the challenge to intensify our work to bring the good news to the world.
Yes, and there are a lot of members of the Filipino clergy that were named as Missionaries of Mercy.
Indeed, Pope Francis named a lot of Filipino priests as Missionaries of Mercy. And Missionaries of Mercy are priests who are given the faculty to hear confessions and to address issues of the people, of the faithful, that usually were reserved to the bishops.
And now we move on to what everyone is looking forward to this 2020, the vaccine against COVID-19. So I think it was mentioned by Pope Francis during his message.
Yeah, that brings us actually to the message of the Pope Francis during Christmas, when he said that everyone should have access to the vaccine, not only the wealthy nations, but we should prioritize the poor. The pandemic provides us, according to the Pope, insights into what the Church has been always telling us, that we are here to serve humanity, a humanity that is always in disagreement. The coming year should not only address the problems that came out this year, but the coming year should offer us hope that it is not yet the end. It is the beginning of a new world, of a new paradigm, of a new way of seeing us, humanity, as one family that cares for each other, that cares for everyone, especially those who are least economically, in human rights, in all situations. And it is also an opportunity, the coming year is also an opportunity to thank everyone, to be grateful to everyone, to those who help, and those who offer the opportunity for others to help.
And speaking of gratitude, we know you have a lot of people to thank for letting us continue this year.
Yes, and I would like to make this opportunity to express our gratitude to the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Thailand who made this project, LiCAS.news, possible, to our partners, and to all those who believe in us that we can become the voice of the voiceless.
And with that, we'd like to thank Mr. Joe Torres for gracing us for this New Year's special for LiCAS News.
And surely this year is very tough. The stories are very interesting and challenging at the same time. And so we would like to thank everyone for sticking with us this 2020. And that's all for this year. I am Maria Lucena.
I am Shirley Benedictos.
And this is LiCAS.news, your independent Catholic news source in Asia. For more stories across Asia, visit our website and subscribe to our YouTube channel.